Welcome to my tutorial for Super Mario Bros. 2. This is also known as the Lost Levels. In the US, it was released on the Super Mario Bros. All-Stars compilation. Now, you can get 99 1-ups if you break one of those bricks and isolate the turtle, and then do the shell jump. That's pretty well known in the first game if you want to get 99 lives to start with. I didn't know about that, but I was just going for a warpless playthrough of the game, so I don't use any warps. I do all the 8 main worlds without any warps, and that's what I'm going to show here. It took me around 17 hours and 9 minutes to beat, and this is like a much harder version of Super Mario Bros. 1. It's kind of like a remix of Super Mario 1, an extreme remix, and this is on the Famicom disk system. So this wasn't released in the US, but it was ported over, on Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo, which was a compilation of the 8-bit, Super Mario Brothers games. So it is included on there. But in that version, which I beat a long time ago back in the day, it lets you save between stages. So it's much easier. If you beat one stage, you never have to play that stage again because it'll save. In this version, you have to beat the entire world to on the default 3 lives. You can get some 1-ups, but you have to beat all 4 stages without losing all your lives. If you go out to the continue screen, you'll have to start from the beginning of the world. So just that one little difference makes this way harder than the Super Nintendo version. But the SNES one, it's not a bad way to practice for this version. If you've already beaten that, then you may want to take it up a notch and try this version. Though I don't really recommend using that as your main practice. I used isolated save state practice to practice each stage, to practice individual sections and all of that, and then put it all together legit. So that's how I always play these type of games. So I'm not going to be showing, I think I only show like one death. That's because there was a checkpoint in this stage, so I show the death here. Now, I'm not going to be mentioning the warp zones, but they exist. There's also warps that will take you, multiple worlds back to the beginning of the game. And troll type of bullshit like that. But I'm not going to be covering any of that because I didn't mess with any of that shit for this playthrough. And I don't really know where all that shit is. I mean, I have an idea where some of it is, but this is going to be warpless. And it's just going to show how I beat all the stages warpless. Now, I probably beat this over the course of a few years, so I don't really remember the earlier stages that well, but I can kind of point out some details that I noticed. And for World 6, 7, and 8, I just freshly did those recently when I returned to the game. So those, I will recall pretty well. So initially I was playing this game. For most of the game I was playing with an arcade joystick, which I've gotten quite good with, and I can kind of match my skill with an arcade joystick on arcade shooters and platformers that don't have momentum mechanics really. You know what I mean? Like a lot of arcade games don't really have a sense of momentum. You just kind of move where you move the stick. There might be a little bit of momentum, but when it comes to games like this was a challenge with an arcade stick because I don't usually play these types of games with an arcade stick. So I was trying to improve my skill with a different type of game with the arcade stick. So because of that, I probably spent several more hours longer for sure, because it made it a lot harder for me to try to be as precise as I normally would, on like maybe 38 years using a gamepad, and I've dabbled with the stick over the years. I do enjoy using a joystick, but it's like that's just not my my main thing that I'll use. I probably like it better for a lot of shooters these days because you really get those micro adjustments when you can feel each click of the joystick, and the buttons on an arcade controller are way more responsive. That if you graze it with your finger, it activates, and with a joystick I can have my hands in an overhand position. I can hit all the buttons much faster that way instead of having to roll my thumb over the buttons. So there is benefits. Now, of course, you can use a gamepad with an overhand grip, but I just never got comfortable with that, so I never play like that. But I usually just roll my thumb on a pad. So yeah, this is the first world. Now, this is not where the game really spikes up, so it gave me some time to kind of go into detail. But for the last few worlds, maybe 6, 7, 8, is when I mainly switched to a gamepad. I may have messed around a bit and did it a little bit, but I was using a stick for a while. I was trying to focus on using the stick and not, giving into the temptation to use a pad too often because I wanted to kind of use the game. I wanted to beat the game, and I also wanted to use it as a chance to kind of improve my skill with the stick. So it's already getting a little challenging here. The game definitely doesn't start off, easy or anything like that. It's already, out of the gate, it's way harder than Super Mario 1, for the NES. I was even considering that maybe the game would be one of the games that I regard as, extreme difficulty, like where it's like a blue highlight in my games beaten list. Out of the 4,000 games or so that I've completed, I have like maybe 13 that are blue highlights, which are like the most extreme things I've completed. But after playing through it, I realized that, it's really not that bad compared to the stuff that's on that list. It's not that fucking hard. It's hard. It's a lot harder than Ghosts and Goblins for the NES, which gets, it does get rated as one of the hardest NES games, which I definitely don't agree with. But it's challenging. I beat that one recently as well. It took me about 9 hours. But I found this to be a lot harder than that. But it might rank up as one of the harder, popular games, up there with like Ninja Gaiden 3 for NES or something like that. But, I wouldn't put it in this super extreme category where that blue stuff goes. Where some of that stuff would be like Gunsmoke for arcade, Kill Knight on the hardest difficulty setting. One stage took like 23 hours or something on that difficulty. Stuff like that is really fucking extreme. With this game, I may have spent a few hours on some of the worlds. Some worlds may have taken 2 hours or 3 hours, but that was probably more the later worlds, and probably more when I was using the joystick. That extended my deaths a lot more. So this game has a lot of troll blocks, and it also has required hidden blocks, sometimes where you have to take a certain path. But I don't think that's the case with this stage. But sometimes you need to activate hidden vines and things like that to beat the stages, or they'll just loop forever. So you're going to see the correct paths throughout this playthrough. Even though I don't remember the specifics of a lot of the earlier stages. But this was a nice one to beat in my backlog. It was sitting there for a while. Along with Kid Nicky for arcade, which I recently beat, which is actually not that hard of an arcade game until you get to the final boss, which is super fucking hard. But I have a tutorial up for that now as well. And I got to go back to Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, the reboot of Ghosts and Goblins on the Legend difficulty, which is that's a blue highlight game. That'll be one of the fucking extreme ones. That's hard as fuck. Though I did realize that the Switch version had tons of fucking input lag, which was what I was working on the game on the Switch, and also beat the Night difficulty setting on the Switch, and I spent a lot of time on Legend on that console, the Legend mode, and now I'm realizing that the PC version has way less fucking input lag. It's actually responsive, unlike the Switch version. I thought it was just a sluggish game. I did suspect input lag, but when I compared them back to back, I said, fuck it, I'm going to start the game over again on Legend, because it plays like shit on the Switch. It's way too fucking laggy, especially for a game like that that's super precise. I mean, you have to be able to change what you're doing immediately, and you need instant response. Otherwise, you're just going to have to rely on a lot of luck, and it's going to take, a lot more hours to break through. So that's a little bit of a dangerous way to do it. You can also run and jump on the block and then jump off so that you keep your momentum. I started doing more of that later. I was also still kind of getting used to the physics again, since it was early in. But you'll see I start playing better and managing much harder stage layouts as the game progresses. I don't replay any stages. This is just, my playthrough with commentary over it. I don't try to replay it for better runs or anything. I did post a few of my better stages, like maybe 2 of my better stages. I spliced them in, but those were from practice sessions usually, so I spliced those in just for tutorial purposes. But I do show my completely full playthrough unedited. I mean, actually it's edited, but it's it's actually how all the stages went when I played the game. So it's a slightly different version. It has like 2 stages. It has the other 2 stages played the normal way. How it actually went down. So I'm not going to explain step by step everything I'm doing, obviously, but I will try to cover things that might not be immediately obvious. You can see it's already getting more dense. There's already like more shit going on. And for the most part, it escalates as you get farther in. But some of the earlier stages are still pretty challenging. But yeah, I remember I beat this on the Super Mario All-Stars compilation probably back a long time ago. And some of the stages, seemed super hard to me back then, even though I beat some of the, I beat all the stages, but some of them seemed really hard, to where I was like, I was probably thinking I wouldn't want to have to do this, 4 stages in a row. It's a lot easier when you only have to do one stage. The worst stage, probably the hardest stage for me, was the 7-3, was the spring stage, because that was the hardest one to understand what was going on exactly. But I'll try to explain it. But you're going to want to save state practice the sections and the stages. Go through the entire world with save state practice first, and then, commit suicide and, replay the world legit. That's what I did. The water stages are the easiest stages, but they're still a lot more aggressive than the ones in the first game, at least in the U.S. But they're definitely the easiest stages in this game. It's usually better to try to move as fast as you can in these stages before enemies can start to, congregate on you, especially the squids. Those are the ones that will actually try to hit into you. At least it seems that way. They do a lot of irritating shit, so it's good to try to get past them as quick as possible, usually. If you have the fireballs, then, it's a lot easier. You can just kill them. But a lot of times, most of the times I wouldn't have any fireballs. I would just be small, and which means you die in one hit, obviously. Even if you get hit with the fireballs in this version, you don't turn into large Mario. You just go straight down to your base form, so it's one-hit death at that point. If you're looking for a much harder version of the first game, then this is a really good one to play. You can also use the warps to get through faster, but you'll still have to do some of the hardest stages. But you'll be able to skip a lot. But since this was one I wanted to beat for a long time, I figured I would just do it, and play through all the stages, just to complete everything. Though there is a 9th world that didn't appear for me for some reason when I beat the game. If you beat it without warping, you're supposed to get a 9th world to appear. And it's like a bonus world. It's actually a really easy world. It's just a bonus, and you have maybe 1 life to complete it, but it's just optional. But I didn't get that for whatever reason. It could be because I may have started this save file as a warping playthrough where I was just going to warp and try to beat the game. And then I think I may have went back and decided to do a warpless. So I may have went back and replayed the stages that I missed. But that may have not been saved. So that's possibly why I didn't get credit for it at the end. But you will see me completing each stage here without warps. So, technically I completed it all by the game's rules, the game's penalties. And another way to, if you want to unlock maybe 2 or 4 more secret worlds, you can beat the game 8 times if you want. And you can use warps if you want too, but if you really want to go through that, you can unlock a few more worlds. And then you got to input some kind of code on the title screen to activate it, so it's not very straightforward. Whenever you beat the game, you'll get a star that shows up on the title screen next to the title of the game. So you'll have to beat it 8 times. Now with this stage, I think there's a specific path. This might be the first maze stage. So I would say just follow the path that I'm taking. You probably have to go up here. If you do it wrong, it just keeps repeating. The screen will keep repeating the same layout again and again. I think I needed to get up here, so it was a little dangerous. With Bowser, it's usually better to kind of wait a little bit for him to jump and then go under him. But early on, it doesn't matter because you're going to see that he's not throwing a stream of hammers constantly. But when you get a little farther into the game, he'll constantly be throwing a stream of hammers along with his regular fireballs. So the easiest way to deal with that is usually to try to wait for him to jump and then run under him immediately. The easiest way to deal with him is to either get to him with Fire Mario, which I think it takes 5 or 6 fireballs to kill him that way. So just stay all the way at the back of the screen and pummel him with fireballs. Or just get to him as Big Mario and, run into him and take the damage. And then just jump and hit the axe at the end. That's the easiest way to do it. But most of the time, you'll probably just get to them as small Mario, so you'll have to run under them. But it's better to do it that way than to try to jump over them most of the time. Later on, there's also going to be things blocking you from jumping over them as well, so it's just better to get used to going underneath. I think this stage was pretty tricky, if I remember right. You probably want to get that power up early on. You get a star right here too, so you can skip some of the levels. Maybe this one's not too difficult. I remember World 4 may have been a little tricky with these Lakitus that chase you through the stages, but this doesn't look too bad. With the Hammer Brothers, if you get your jump at just the right range, meaning you're far back enough, you can jump over the Hammer Brother before he even gets a chance to attack, which is something I learned more later. I had forgotten about that in the first game when I beat the first game years ago, but you don't have to use it that much in the first game. The Hammer Brothers become more of an issue near the end of the game in the first game, especially if you warp to the last world. But in this, you're going to be dealing with Hammer Brothers a lot, so if you have a chance, you want to try to jump early to get over the hammers and over them. And if you do it right, sometimes you can jump over them before they even get a chance to attack. If you get the range perfect. That's something you want to try to do. Later on, it's almost a necessity to do it. The momentum can be tricky in this game. I think I was still using a stick too, but it does take a while for Mario to get some speed from a standstill. So that's why it's usually easier to keep running as much as you can. Hold the run button and try to keep moving. Because once you lose your momentum, it gets a lot harder to make certain jumps. So if you can, it's good to keep moving, most of the time. See, because my momentum was getting pretty shitty there, and I was barely making those jumps. But if I would have approached it faster, I probably could have done it a little better. Sometimes you just lose momentum rapidly, and it can be tricky, and then you just end up dying. So sometimes that throws me off. Yeah, for that part, you just run down. It looks like you need to jump down, but the ceiling might make it a little difficult. So I would say just run down. You should make it. There's a mushroom here you can get if you sneak by that little fire. This is a long one, so you got to be fast with this one, and then try to get to the platform or get to the end. Kill these things first before trying to go up there. You're going to have to kind of curve your jump here to get up at the right time. It's a little tricky. See, I was able to jump the Hammer Brother by doing it early. I kind of went over everything. Sometimes he will throw a hammer up really high if he gets his attack out, and then you just take damage. So I don't know if you can always avoid damage from them, but you have a better chance if you jump early with a lot of speed. At a full run speed and jump, you can get over them sometimes. So as we see, just take the damage and use the invincibility frames that you get for a few seconds to get to the axe. That's an old trick from the original game, still works. So now we're a little bit over halfway. There's only 8 worlds. But things start to spike up, I think, from these last few worlds. I don't remember World 5 that well because I took a long break after World 5. So 6, 7, and 8 I just did within the last week or so. So I'll probably remember those. Trying to get some momentum here to get up here. Not sure if I was still using an arcade stick at this point. Possibly. I know by World 6 I definitely switched over to a gamepad. I was using the Gilly Kit Elves controller, which is actually a really good. The D-pad is really good and the buttons are really good. I think I like it better than the 8-bit Do M30 that I was mainly using for these type of games. So I think that's going to be my new controller for 2D games. It felt, very responsive, no issues. I remember having more response issues with the M30 for whatever reason. I don't know if it may have been input lag, but it just felt a little more sluggish and it would throw off my movements. But it's possible I was just playing badly. I haven't tested it in a while. With Ghost and Goblins Resurrection, though, I noticed it immediately when I played the Switch version. Then I switched over to the PC version, and the PC version was so much more responsive immediately. So at that point, I said, "Fuck it, I'm not even going to work on the Switch, on the hardest mode on the Switch version anymore." That's why I'm going to switch over to PC and start the game over. And it's still going to be super fucking hard, but I need any little advantage I can get to save myself extra hours of fucking frustration with, the game not responding properly. At the time, I didn't know that the PC version was better, that there'd be a difference in input lag. I never really thought about that. I would have just got the game on PC. So somehow I kind of warped up here. Sometimes that happens when you're on the bottom platform. But, normally you would just jump normally across. I wouldn't recommend trying to do it that way. There may be a warp all the way to the right, but it may also be one of the warps that takes you backwards. I'm not sure what that is. A lot of the warps will take you, the previous stages. So if you do end up in an area where, it's trying to warp you back to a previous stage, you can either commit suicide or you can just wait for the timer to run out. If you're on an emulator, just use the fast forward button and run out the timer. If not, just leave the controller, maybe do something else for a few minutes, but it's not really worth warping back to previous stages. So there's no reason to go into the warp pipe if you accidentally take a wrong turn. Just, wait it out. I may have needed to go up in that pipe for this stage route, so do pay attention to some of the routes that I take, because sometimes they're required. I just can't confirm that now because it's been too long since I played this stage, but I should remember the next few worlds better. That's a little tricky. You do have to hold the jump button before you bounce off an enemy to get a super jump. So it is a standard thing these days for the Mario games, but if you're not familiar with them, you probably don't want to start with this game if you're not really familiar with the original game. You probably want to try the original one first for practice and get a feel for it. But this one does have some mechanics that are more exaggerated. Like the springs can be super exaggerated in some areas where they give you a massive off-screen jump where you can't even see your character, which we're going to see soon. And when you hold the jump button before hitting an enemy, you do a really high, super jump. I don't know if that was even in the original game at all. I don't really remember. But in this, you get a really high jump by doing that. So that's a skill that you need to have for this version of the game. It's required. It's not optional. So follow this route that I'm taking here. This was actually my fast run of the stage when I was doing practice. So in my normal playthrough, if you watch my regular video, my regular playthrough with no commentary, you'll see me taking it slower, kind of taking my time a little bit and being more patient and careful, which is how I would recommend playing it if you're not familiar with it. But in my commentary videos, I try to show some of my better footage from practice and things like that. It's not meant to be a straight-through playthrough, it's spliced together. So, but the only changes I made to this one was I edited out most of the deaths, as I did with my regular playthrough. You don't want to see 17 hours of deaths. But I do post that stuff, but just not as a single video. I post failed attempts and stuff, but it's in a bunch of different videos, But it's not in the main playthrough. So yeah, I removed the deaths, and I'll splice in some of my better stage runs, but I think I only replaced 2 of the stages with better versions. So this is where wind is introduced, and wind can be a pain in the ass. It makes you jump way farther, and it can be harder to control your jumps. So you got to get used to that. There may have been a spring in this stage too. Wasn't really paying attention, but there will be a lot more springs to deal with. So I'm going to go over it when I'm going to go over the spring mechanics soon, especially by 7.3. But yeah, it can really fuck up your movement with the wind. So sometimes the wind just disappears when you hit certain trigger points in the stage. I guess when you cross a certain threshold, the wind will go away. It's kind of like, I don't know if you can wait for the wind to go away. I don't think you can. It's just the wind is present in certain parts of the stage, and I think you just have to deal with it. I don't think the wind changes, though. I think it's always the same. It's not like Ninja Gaiden 2 where the wind has like a neutral state, or it's blowing against you, or it's blowing, you know, in the opposite direction, gives you momentum. I think it's just one way, from what I remember. So this is actually an easy stage, you know, compared to a lot of the platforming stuff. So, you know, use that to your advantage. At least you can get in an easy stage, because, you know, you have to redo all these stages every time you fuck up. Like if you fuck up on 6-4, you got to redo 6-1, 6-2, 6-3, and then try 6-4 again. So, you know, if you lose all your lives anyway. Once you find a route, you can do this pretty consistently without too much trouble. It can still be a little tricky, but I mean, this is easy compared to most of the game. It's good when there's easier stages mixed in the harder worlds, because, you know, it gives you a little bit of a break. You'll be able to get back to where you were faster if there's some easy stages in there, but there's a few stages that aren't too bad in some of these later worlds that give you a little bit of a break. So here you want to try to keep moving as much as possible, but, you know, tap left while you're jumping to slow down a little bit at points so you don't get too far ahead where you're going to get hit by something. You got to try to adjust as you're moving. Try to grab this if you can, because any power-up is super useful in this game, just to be able to take an extra hit. You have to do a shell jump there. This may be another maze level. A lot of these levels are mazes where you have to take the right. You have to take the correct paths, like up, middle, down, and you have to do them all in a correct order to progress. But this may be another one. Not sure yet, but if you are having issues, just follow the path that I take just to make sure. I think it is. See, I'm taking the top one here. I think it may be another maze where you have to take the right path. This one's not too hard at it. Well, actually, this one was kind of tricky. Not the easiest thing, but the last one is quite difficult in 8-4. You want to run just as this thing's coming up, and you'll just make it. You want to set a mental kind of check mark in your mind with stuff like that, timing-based stuff, you know, where when the fire pole swings to a certain part of the screen, that's when you're going to start running. You know, you want to get that little mental marker in your head. So that, you know, that if you're having trouble with that, then you state practice. But that wasn't one of the parts that I needed to practice. So now it's gonna. This world is quite difficult. This one probably took me about 2 hours, 3 hours. For that first turtle, you want to kind of just drop down and let the wind push you over the pipe, and then do a small jump over the turtle. For this part, there's a star you can get down there, but I don't get it because it doesn't really help me out. I already knew how to play this part. I used the shell to take out one of the Hammer brothers, and then I just smacked the other one from below. And then I'll get a fireball here. I'm going to break the brick to the right to give myself some space, and then I'm going to go down, kill this this piranha plant, hit the 1-up, come back down and grab the 1-up. So it is worth getting that 1-up. And just use your fire. You should have a fire flower at this point, so use it to kill all this shit. And if you move fast enough, you don't have to deal with a double bullet bill on screen and the 2 turtles. So try to move fast past that area. You're near the end. Try to move like really quickly. Because if you linger around too long, you'll shoot more bullet bills out. It's easy to get hit. Now this is where you have to take a specific route. Hit this mushroom here because it's good to get if you need it. This part, like, scroll the screen so you can see one of the turtles, and then you gotta use your super jumps to bounce on both of those. So that part's kind of tough. But you'll be doing it a lot because you're going to have to repeat these stages a lot, most likely. There's a fire flower up here. If you're big, you can get that. It's worth getting that because it makes the rest of the stage much easier. The rest of the stage can be kind of hard without the fire flower. It's doable, but If you take your time, you can kill all the shit that's in your way and jump across. Kill these two enemies before you go forward. I think you got to connect the fireball with its head. If you hit the cloud, it doesn't do anything. So you can use that jump to get up on the platform, or you can just do a really far running jump. This one you need to do. You need to do that shell jump. It's a little tricky, but... And watch out for the piranha plant. That stage actually becomes, one of the easier ones with some practice, because it's short. But it is still tricky. So this stage is probably the hardest stage in the game. The trick here is that you're going to jump on the springs, but before your feet touch the spring, you got to hold the jump button at the right time to get the super jump. It's a really weird timing. Once you get it down, you can do it consistently. But it is a strange, see, I got hit there because of that turtle, but you want to time it just before your feet touch the spring, and you'll get the super jump. Now, once you've got that timing mastered, that's one part of learning the stage. The other part is that you're going to scroll the screen and try to line up with these other springs. And this was not my best run of it, but if you time it right, you can keep chaining the springs together where you don't have to take a break, which I've done before as I got better with the stage. But the thing to remember is that when you bounce up from that spring, Mario is going to be in the center of the screen, but you're not going to be able to see him. The problem with that is that you're going to hold right to scroll the screen forward. You want to hold it right. As you're doing that, though, you want to tap the left. You want to tap back to slow your character down while he's off screen. But only tap it a few times to slow down. Never hold left at all. If you hold left, your character will likely end up in some weird position off screen and fall in the hole or miss the spring, which can easily result in losing the stage. So, the main thing to remember is just tap the left button to slow down. Don't hold it. And you should fall from the center of the screen if you do it that way. You got to line up the center of the screen with the next spring, basically. And that's most of what you need to do for that stage. But you should practice all the little intricacies of it to get it down. This part is tricky because a lot of times these platforms won't line up the way you need them. You have to wait a little bit so that they have kind of a staircase pattern. Otherwise, they'll all be lined up perfectly, and you won't be able to jump up on them. It's a shitty part. You can get the mushroom, though, if you want. So now there's a 1-up you can get here, and as long as you keep getting back here, you can keep getting the 1-up. So I'm going to show how to do that. It's not a power-up, but it's a way to get it. So follow this shell, and if you follow it just right, you'll kill all the enemies, then jump at the end, and you'll get the 1-up each time. Because if a shell hits enough enemies, it gives you a 1-up. So that's how you keep getting that 1-up, and you can just keep doing that. You just crouch in the corners for these things. Or if you're small, you don't have to crouch, but either way, these parts are very easy. And now you want to kind of try to quickly move through if you can to get up here. And if you're big, you can just take the hit. If not, wait for him to jump and run over him. You want to get used to anticipating his jumps and running, under him. You should get used to it by this point, but it is the easiest way to get past those usually. So this is the final world, and this is one of the toughest ones. Though I probably had more trouble with the spring area. I think I spent more time on World 7 because of that spring area. It wasn't clear how to deal with those springs consistently. I would keep missing the long jump and doing a short hop, and that fucks everything up. So here you're going to hop across. But yeah, tapping back to slow your character down when you can't see him off screen with the springs, that was key to making the stage manageable. Until I learned that, it was way harder. So I spent a lot of time. We're definitely doing some long-range shell jumps. You have to do that jump just at the end. So grab this mushroom if you want it. And the reason I'm fucking around down here is because I want the 1-up. So there's a 1-up that only appears on one of your lives. Once you get it, you can't keep getting it, but it will appear once. I think it's worth getting, even if you lose your power-ups. Now, I have beaten this stage and kept the fire flower, but pretty rare. Doesn't usually happen. So most of the time, I'll end up, small at the end of the stage. Because, if I didn't get the 1-up, I could easily keep the fire flower. it'd be easier to grab it, but I'd rather get a 1-up. Because, you know, the chances are I'm always going to die on, you know, one of the stages. Especially the final castle. That's where I was losing most of my lives by this point, once I got used to the other stages. So you can get a mushroom here. This stage isn't too difficult, but I think it may have a secret exit. So, again, tap left. After you use that spring, tap left to kind of slow down. Or actually, for that part, I think you hold left briefly to slow your character down just enough so you can reach that center pillar. And then you can kind of just balance up there while the wind is blowing you back and make your jump. So you need to do that turtle jump perfectly to activate this vine, and this is your way out of the stage. So it's actually a really short stage, and it's really not that hard once you know the exit. If you don't take that exit, the stage just keeps looping. So that is the only way out. But you'll get multiple chances to do it again and again, but you'll just have to go through part of the stage again and again. So this is one of the harder stages, and I'm doing it small here to show how I usually end up doing it. You have to make those running jumps, you know. And there's a lot to explain here, but try to jump early, like I said, with the Hammer Brothers, and skip all this shit. It's hard for me to explain all that shit exactly. That's just practice, you know. So practice it with saves, but try to follow what I'm doing somewhat. Now get this star, and you're going to make a very tight jump here with the spring, where you really have to kind of jump at the edge of the spring. And, you know, it's pretty strict, but not super anal, but it's got to be pretty tight. And then you don't have to do the shell jumps if you do that. But, of course, you can't do shell jumps when you're in star form because you're invincible. So you'll just kill them instead and go in the pit. So make sure you got that down. And then you're going to jump up here and take that path. It's kind of a tight little angle jump. And then you can jump across to the end. This final stage is a maze, so follow what I'm doing. These jumps are tough. You got to do a small hop. Don't do a full jump. Do a small hop and then fade back by holding the left, the back direction. Just fade back like that, but it doesn't always work. So it can be tricky. You want to jump up here, most likely, and then come back and go in that pipe. It's easier to do it that way than to try to do a short jump into the pipe. So here, just keep moving, and now move a little fast, do a little sprint here, and now just wait for the fire thing to go up and go under it. The blooper usually won't hit you. It's usually pretty safe. It looks dangerous, but he doesn't go all the way down usually. So get this mushroom, and now we're going to do another one of those fade jumps. That's one of the harder maneuvers to pull off. You also want to jump off to the right a bit to lure the piranha plant out. See, well, I didn't do it that time, but usually I have to do that to get him to come out again, because you want to lure him out, and you want to wait till he goes back in before you take that jump, because he'll pop out right when you get there. I like to move fast through this part because there's a block that will hit you in the head and fuck you up while you're trying to attack all those enemies. So make sure you run across the platform when it's close to the other ground platforms with the gaps, because you can run across gaps. So that's what you have to do. If you don't do it that way, you'll reset the maze. You have to take that path. You have to run from that platform that's moving in the lava. So now wait for the green turtle to leave. You want to wait for that green turtle to leave. Like when that green turtle starts moving back to the right and the red turtle's all the way at the bottom, that's when you make your jump, and then you can jump on both turtles to get across. Very specific jump. So just pay attention to the timing on that and the positioning of the turtles. You have to do it that way pretty much. I mean, you can probably get away with other shit, but that's the way I did it. There's a fake Bowser, which you can just go under. If you have fireballs, obviously, use those, but I got hit, probably. And then for the last one, you know, if you're big, hopefully you can be big pretty easily at that point. Just take the hit and run past. Yeah, and that's it. So that completes the 8 main worlds. For some reason, like I said, I didn't unlock the bonus 9th world, but I didn't really care because I was just trying to beat the game. So as long as you beat the 8 worlds, you know, you've completed the game. Everything else is a bonus. But yeah, definitely a tough game, a good one to complete. Not as bad as I was making it out to be. I was having more trouble with it initially because I think I insisted on using the joystick, which is not my strongest point with these kind of games. Though I still got through most of the game with the joystick. It just took longer. You know, eventually I would beat it with it, but it would extend the playtime further. So that's it. It shows all the toads you saved, which is because if you don't warp, you save a toad because you beat each stage. You save one toad for each stage you complete, pretty much. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.